The Empire's view of humanity. The Galactic Empire sprawled across countless star systems, an iron-fisted government made up of technologically advanced species that ruled over hundreds of planets. With their towering cities and powerful fleets, the Empire was the embodiment of power and sophistication. But among the many species it ruled, there were some, like the humans, that were considered little more than curiosities. The Empire's attitude towards humanity was one of detached condescension, seeing them as primitive, fragile creatures, beneath the notice of any true Imperial power. On the capital planet of Varades, within the gleaming marble halls of the Imperial Council, a meeting was taking place. The Council, composed of beings from various galactic species, convened in a space that was as cold and unfeeling as the Empire itself. The holographic images of their discussions flickered above their polished stone table. "I have reports," a sharp, angular creature with 4 arms said, "of a human woman in the wilds of Geras 7, a planet far on the edge of our borders. Apparently, she's some sort of hunter, living among the fauna there and surviving in the jungle." The speaker, Zyphar, a high-ranking member of the Administrative Council, snorted with disdain. "I suppose she's one of those wild humans that are sometimes kept for novelty in the Imperial homes." The others around the table murmured in agreement, exchanging glances of amusement. "Perhaps we should send a small force to capture her," Thrax, a towering reptilian general, proposed, leaning back in his chair. "It could make for an entertaining hunt. A human in the wilds. Ridiculous. You underestimate these creatures, Thrax," Zyphar said, rolling his multifaceted eyes. "Humans have never been known for much, except being useful as pets or subjects of amusement. They're weak, disorganized. A civilized species would never survive in such a hostile environment." Zyphar dismissed the notion with a wave of his hand, clearly unconcerned. The general nodded thoughtfully, the massive claws on his hands tapping rhythmically on the surface of the table. "Then it's settled. A small contingent. Capture her alive, if possible. It will be amusing to see her put on display. Perhaps some kind of gladiatorial event in the arena." The council laughed at the thought, their voices echoing through the cold chambers. To them, humans were no more than a fleeting curiosity, something to be watched for amusement before being discarded. There was no respect, no fear of the species. In their eyes, humans were no more than animals, beasts that could be tamed, trained, and displayed like exotic pets. But while the Empire chuckled at their own superiority, far from the glittering halls of power, another story was unfolding. In the untamed jungles of Geras 7, a place where few dared to venture, one human had already proved herself a force to be reckoned with. Ariana Voss had been a captive once, like so many of her kind. Born on Earth, she had spent years under the watchful eyes of the Empire. They viewed her as little more than an exotic pet, a specimen to study, a curiosity to be displayed to alien dignitaries. But unlike the others, Ariana had fought back. She had resisted. Eventually, she had escaped, slipping away from her captors during a transport mission to the remote world of Geras 7. The planet, an untamed wilderness of dense jungles and vast, alien ecosystems, was her new home. It didn't take long for Ariana to adapt. The jungle's dangers weren't much different from the hardships she had faced under the Empire's rule. The wildlife here was fierce and the terrain unforgiving, but she had learned to survive. With nothing but her bow and a knife, Ariana hunted the planet's wildest creatures. She became a legend among the locals, an apex predator, unchallenged in her domain. Her companion in this jungle was a honey badger, a creature once thought extinct but now genetically enhanced. Unlike the feral creatures she had once hunted for sport, this honey badger was intelligent, capable of understanding commands and working as part of a team. It was larger and more aggressive than any other of its kind, but it was also loyal, bonded to Ariana in a way that went beyond simple survival. Together, they hunted. Together, they thrived. The humans that had once been caged, paraded, and mocked were far from helpless. Ariana was a testament to that. She moved through the jungle with lethal grace, her honey badger at her side, hunting both for food and as a means of surviving. She knew the Empire would never stop looking for her. An escaped human was a valuable asset to be recaptured, but Ariana was determined to make them regret underestimating her. She wasn't a pet. She was a hunter, and the galaxy was about to find out the true meaning of that. Meanwhile, back in the Empire, their plans were already in motion. They had no idea what was waiting for them on Geras 7. They had no idea that they were about to encounter a woman who was every bit as dangerous as any of the galaxy's fiercest warriors, and that her companion was something far more lethal than any army they could send. But it was too late to turn back now. The hunt was about to begin, and the Empire would soon learn that they had underestimated humanity in ways they could never have imagined. A glimpse of power. The Galactic Empire's military machinery rolled into motion with the precision of a well-oiled machine, but none of its commanders realized how ill-prepared they were for the challenge ahead. General Thrax, with his reptilian skin glistening under the twin suns of Geras 7, surveyed his forces with a satisfied grin. His troops, a squadron of elite soldiers clad in exoskeletal armor, looked eager for the hunt. The general had no doubt they would bring down the human woman quickly. After all, she was just a wild animal in their eyes. A woman, no less, with primitive tools, caged on a backward planet. How much trouble could one lone human possibly pose to an empire of their might? Thrax's thoughts were interrupted by the whirring sound of the dropship's engines. The door hissed open, revealing the lush, uncharted jungle of Geras 7. The trees stretched high into the sky, their strange leaves shimmering with colors that no earthling would recognize. The ground was thick with undergrowth, and the air was thick with humidity. Sweat immediately began to bead on the soldiers' foreheads as they disembarked, but their leader was unfazed. Thrax's cold, calculating eyes scanned the surroundings, already mapping out their course. Find her. Capture her alive. The Emperor wants her as a trophy, Thrax ordered, his voice low and commanding. His soldiers dispersed into the jungle, weapons drawn, their armor enhanced by the most advanced technology the Empire had to offer. But as they moved deeper into the jungle, an unsettling feeling began to creep over them. The planet wasn't as quiet as they had expected. The hum of the jungle was alive with sound, and the air felt dense, almost suffocating. Birds, or what passed for birds here, fluttered overhead, their eyes shining with curiosity. However, there was something else, something hidden just out of view. The soldiers didn't see it, but they felt it. There was a predator lurking just out of reach. The first casualty came quickly. Private Zinn, a young soldier who had never been far from the Empire's fortified cities, was the first to break ranks. As he moved through the dense foliage, the underbrush rustled behind him. He spun around, heart pounding, only to catch a fleeting glimpse of something large. Too large for any typical jungle creature. Before he could react, a blur of motion slammed into him from behind. The soldier's scream was cut short as he was dragged away by something fierce, something powerful. The sound of his armor crunching under the weight of the assault echoed through the trees. The other soldiers heard the noise and rushed to the scene, but when they arrived, there was nothing left but a smear of blood across the jungle floor. Thrax's sharp eyes scanned the area, a flicker of unease running through him. He hadn't expected this. He had assumed that the human woman would be a simple target, but this was something else. Something primal, something more dangerous than a mere escapee. Spread out, Thrax growled. Keep your eyes peeled. We are not alone here. The soldiers followed his orders, but the jungle seemed to close in around them. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, and no matter how far they advanced, there was no sign of their quarry. Then, in a clearing up ahead, a lone figure emerged from the shadows. A woman, dressed in tattered clothes and moving with the quiet, lethal grace of a predator. She wasn't running. She was stalking. She moved in sync with the jungle, her eyes sharp and calculating, a bow held firmly in her hands. Ariana Voss. Her presence in the clearing was like a shock to the soldiers. They had expected to find a frail, terrified human, but instead, here was a woman whose confidence was evident in every step. Her eyes locked onto the soldiers, and for a brief moment, she was still. Then, with a sudden, fluid motion, she pulled an arrow from her quiver and notched it to the bowstring. The tension in the air was palpable. One of the soldiers, a seasoned sharpshooter, reacted quickly, leveling his weapon and firing a bolt of energy at her. But before the shot could reach its target, Ariana was gone, vanished into the underbrush with inhuman speed. The soldier's shot hit nothing but empty air, and then there was a rustling sound, followed by the terrifying sound of something charging through the trees. From the shadows, something massive emerged, a hulking, snarling beast with razor-sharp claws and a thick, muscular frame. The soldiers barely had time to react as the genetically enhanced honey badger tore into their ranks. The creature, though smaller than some of the Empire's war machines, was a whirlwind of aggression. It darted in and out of the soldiers' range with terrifying speed, dodging their shots and incapacitating them with swift, brutal force. It tore through their armor like paper, its jaws clamping down with bone-crushing power. The soldiers tried to fight back, but their advanced weapons were useless against the wildness of the beast. Thrax's eyes widened in disbelief. He had heard of the honey badger, a species that had been genetically engineered to be the ultimate predator, but he had never encountered one in person. Now he saw just how deadly it truly was. "Fall back!" Thrax barked, but it was too late. The remaining soldiers scattered, trying to escape the fury of the beast, but the honey badger was relentless. Ariana's figure reappeared in the chaos, moving like a shadow through the trees, guiding the beast with a look, a command. With a final, devastating charge, the honey badger drove one of the soldiers into the ground, and then, with a swift twist, it crushed the soldier's skull. Thrax, watching the carnage unfold, realized that the woman he had dismissed as a mere wild human was a predator in her own right, every bit as dangerous as any of the Empire's deadliest warriors. In the chaos, Ariana gave a single, sharp whistle. The honey badger, satisfied with its work, bounded back to her side. Ariana's eyes met Thrax's across the battlefield, and for the first time, the general felt something he rarely ever experienced: fear. "Prepare for extraction," Thrax ordered, his voice tight with frustration and disbelief. "This hunt is over." But deep down, he knew the truth. This was no simple quarry. This woman, this human, had turned the tables on the Empire in a way they never could have anticipated. And the Empire would never look at humans the same way again. The Empire's reckoning. The jungle of Jairus. 7 was eerily silent as General Thrax and his surviving soldiers regrouped. What had begun as a simple mission to capture a single human fugitive had escalated into a nightmare. Thrax's once confident demeanor was now a mask barely holding in place. His reputation had been bruised, and his pride wounded, and now he had to explain a crushing failure to the Empire's higher-ups. The general stood at the edge of the clearing where his soldiers lay scattered, their bodies either torn apart by the genetically enhanced honey badger or crushed under the weight of Ariana's ruthless precision. The air was thick with the scent of blood, and the only sound that broke the silence was the occasional rustle of leaves as something unseen moved through the foliage. Thrax's fingers twitched, itching to grip his weapon, but he knew that anger would get him nowhere. His gaze flickered to the horizon. No sign of Ariana. No sign of the beast. It was as if the jungle itself had swallowed them whole. But he knew better than to think it was over. She was still out there, watching them. Her eyes had locked onto his in a way that unsettled him. In that brief moment, he had understood. She wasn't afraid of him. She was the predator. He was the prey. Back on the Empire's flagship, Vraxen, orbiting Jairus 7, the weight of the mission's failure was already making waves through the upper echelons of the Empire's command structure. The Emperor himself had been notified of the situation. His message was terse, but the threat was unmistakable. "General Thrax, fail again, and I will personally send your body back to the Empire in pieces." Thrax knew the Emperor's cruelty all too well, but that wasn't the issue at hand. His failure had sent ripples through the ranks of the Empire's elite military. A human woman, one he had dismissed as a mere animal, had proven capable of making a mockery of his best soldiers. Worse, she had made him look weak. The very idea of a human defeating an elite strike force was unthinkable. "I want her alive," the Emperor's voice echoed through his communicator, cold and commanding. "Bring her to me. If she's as capable as you say, perhaps we can use her as a test subject. The gene-splicing experiments may yield something useful." Thrax stiffened. The thought of Ariana being turned into a genetic experiment, something to be twisted into a weapon for the Empire, made his blood run cold. But his orders were clear. He had no choice but to comply. The Empire never tolerated failure. "Understood, my lord," Thrax replied, his voice steady despite the gnawing anxiety in his chest. Ariana Voss had retreated deeper into the jungle after her brutal encounter with the Empire soldiers. Her honey badger companion, bloodied but unharmed, remained close by her side, panting in satisfaction. For the first time since the attack, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, to allow the adrenaline that had surged through her to settle. She could feel the eyes of the jungle on her, the same way she always had, but now she sensed something different. The Empire wasn't going to back down. They would send more, and this time, they would come better prepared. She could hear their communications, faint echoes in the distance through the enhanced devices she'd scavenged during her years on Jairus 7. The Empire was regrouping, preparing for another assault. But Ariana was ready. She had grown up in the shadows of her captors, playing their games until she could escape. And now that she was free, she would not go back. The next day, General Thrax returned to the jungle, this time with a larger, better-equipped force. He knew he couldn't afford to make the same mistakes again. The soldiers were equipped with tracking devices, enhanced armor, and new weapons designed to deal with the wild creatures of Jairus 7. This was no longer about a simple hunt. This was about proving a point to Ariana, to the Empire, and to himself. He was determined to bring her back, alive, if possible. He had to show the Empire that humans were not beyond control, that even the most primal of them could be subdued by superior technology and strategy. As Thrax's team advanced, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The soldiers were alert, their weapons scanning for any sign of movement. But the jungle remained eerily still. It was clear Ariana was no fool. She had slipped away, using the terrain to her advantage. Thrax's eyes narrowed as his team spread out, moving methodically through the underbrush. Ariana had left behind no obvious tracks, no footprints, no broken branches. It was as though she had vanished into thin air. But then, just as Thrax began to feel the frustration of another futile search, he heard it, the faintest sound of a twig snapping. His heart skipped a beat. He motioned for his team to stop. He knew she was close. With a signal from Thrax, the soldiers fanned out. One by one, they moved into position, setting up a perimeter. They had her cornered. They would not let her escape this time. And then, like a shadow, Ariana appeared. The soldiers barely had time to react before she fired the first arrow. It was a direct hit, slicing through the air and embedding itself into one soldier's neck. His body crumpled to the ground, blood spilling onto the dirt. Ariana didn't wait for the chaos to unfold. She moved like a streak of lightning, darting from tree to tree, using the jungle to cover her every movement. The Empire's soldiers tried to track her, but she was faster, more elusive, like a ghost in the trees. The genetically enhanced honey badger was with her, charging into the fray and tearing through soldiers like paper. It was a blur of violence. Ariana's arrows flying through the air with deadly precision, the honey badger mauling anyone who came too close. Thrax's eyes burned with fury. This time he would not fail. He barked orders into his communicator, calling in reinforcements, but it was already too late. Ariana had already inflicted too much damage, and the remaining soldiers were either dead or fleeing in panic. The general stood motionless, watching the destruction unfold around him. His forces were crumbling, his reputation in tatters. And as he watched Ariana disappear once more into the jungle, he realized something far more dangerous than any rebellion had just begun to take root in the heart of the Empire. The humans, once seen as weak, fragile creatures, had found their strength. And now, the Empire would have to reckon with it. For the first time, General Thrax truly understood the gravity of the situation. He had underestimated Ariana Voss. Worse, he had underestimated humanity itself. And now, the hunt was no longer just about a single human. It was about something far bigger. The Empire's very foundation was at risk, and it had no idea just how deep the rebellion had already taken root. The last stand. The jungle of Jairus, 7 had become a battlefield. The Empire's forces, once so confident in their superiority, were now scattered and desperate. General Thrax, his soldiers broken and his pride shattered, stood at the heart of the encampment, staring out into the dense foliage. His mind churned, calculating, weighing his options. Every choice seemed wrong, every strategy a dead end. He had never encountered an enemy like Ariana Voss. The human woman, with her cunning and her honey badger, had made fools of the Empire's finest. General, a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Commander Reth, his second-in-command, and she looked as grim as Thrax felt. Her face was smeared with dirt and blood, and her eyes reflected the same exhaustion that had claimed the rest of the survivors. "We've lost half our men," Reth said, her voice low, almost resigned. "The jungle, it's against us. Ariana knows every inch of it, and her honey badger is like a force of nature. We can't keep going like this. We need to call for reinforcements or pull back." Thrax clenched his fists, his claws digging into his palms. He was a soldier, a tactician. He never retreated. But the reality of the situation was clear. Ariana had proven herself more than just a fugitive. She had become a symbol, a force that could not be easily crushed. The idea of abandoning the hunt gnawed at him, but the Empire's priorities had to be respected. "Reinforcements," Thrax muttered, turning away. "But not in the way you think." Across the jungle, Ariana Voss sat on a large rock overlooking a narrow stream, her honey badger at her feet, resting for the first time in hours. The chaos of the day had been intense, but she knew better than to let her guard down. The Empire would regroup, and they would come back stronger. They had to. It was their nature, but she had made them bleed. She had made them understand that she wasn't just a human. They were dealing with something far more dangerous than they had imagined. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a crackling twig underfoot. She tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for her bow, but the movement was slow, deliberate. She had learned long ago not to shoot at shadows. This was no wild animal. She stood slowly, her body still, eyes scanning the dense jungle. Out of the darkness, a figure stepped into view, a man, ragged and worn, his face marked by fear. Ariana's eyes narrowed, and she relaxed her grip on the bow. The man was human, one of the Empire's soldiers. His uniform was torn, and his eyes darted nervously. "Please," the man whispered, his voice trembling. "I'm not here to fight. I'm not with them anymore." Ariana's gaze softened ever so slightly, but she didn't lower her weapon. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steady and cold. I just want to survive. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to be a part of this," the man said, his hands raised in surrender. "They're coming for you, and I know how they think. I can help you." Ariana considered his words for a long moment. He could be a trap. The Empire had spies everywhere. But something in his eyes, something genuine, made her pause. She had learned to trust her instincts, and right now, they told her to listen. "Why?" she asked. "Why should I trust you?" "I'm just a soldier," the man replied, his voice cracking. "But I've seen enough. I've seen what they do to people like you. I've seen what they've done to the others. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I just want to help you get away. I know their next move." Ariana's face hardened again, the cautious warrior taking control. "And what's their next move?" The man swallowed hard, stepping closer, his voice barely a whisper. "They're calling in the Eradicator, an elite special forces unit. You'll never survive against them. Not in this jungle. You have to leave now while you still can." Ariana took a step back, her mind whirling. The Eradicator was the Empire's deadliest force, trained to deal with threats like her. There would be no escape once they arrived. The game had changed. She couldn't keep playing hide and seek with them forever. But she had one advantage left, her environment. "I'm not running," Ariana said, her tone resolute. "If they want me, they'll have to come for me on my terms." The soldier looked defeated, shaking his head. "They'll burn this whole jungle to the ground to find you. There's no way out. I'm telling you, you need to leave now." Ariana met his eyes for a long moment, and in that instant, she made up her mind. "If you want to help," she said, "then you could do something useful. Take me to their extraction point. Show me where they're landing. If they want to fight, then we'll give them one." The soldier hesitated, clearly afraid of his former comrades. But his fear of the Empire was greater than his fear of the woman standing before him. He nodded. "I'll take you, but you have to promise me. If we do this, there's no turning back. Once you make your move, they'll hunt you down for good." Ariana glanced at the jungle around her, the same jungle that had protected her so far. "I've already made my move," she said, "and I'm not backing down." As the soldier led Ariana deeper into the jungle, the sound of distant engines began to grow louder. The Empire was coming, this time not for a simple capture, but for an all-out assault. And Ariana knew that this would be her final stand. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to hide. If the Empire wanted a war, they were going to get one. By the time the Eradicator unit touched down on Jairus 7, Ariana Voss would be waiting. And this time, it wouldn't be just her fighting back. It would be the whole galaxy watching as the Empire finally realized the true strength of humanity.